Hello everyone, this is Rob Zaleski with Marketing Profs. Welcome to today's seminar. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to thank Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects for sponsoring today's broadcast. Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects is the smarter B2B data partner. D&B Net Prospects helps marketing and sales organizations optimize their revenue impact by increasing the quality and effectiveness of their marketing data management practices. Thousands of B2B organizations rely on Net Prospects to assess, cleanse, enrich, and grow their marketing data in order to fuel high-performing marketing campaigns and accelerate the creation of the sales pipeline. If you're on Twitter, be sure to add hashtag #MarketingHero to your seminar-related tweets during or after this broadcast. That's hashtag #MarketingHero. Okay, today's webcast is Your Mission: Defeat the Top 5 Data Villains, and our presenters are Sean Crowley and Barbara Ellis. Sean is the Director of Product and Customer Marketing at Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects. He's a veteran in the data management space with 20-plus years in sales and marketing roles for companies like IBM, Informatica, and Essential Software. His experiences have confirmed for him that strategic and effective marketing execution is highly dependent on quality data. Barbara is a seasoned marketing professional with in-depth knowledge of retailing, agency, and OEM environments working on B2C, B2B2C, and B2B businesses. She manages the Marketing Transformation and Market Visibility Initiative at Fluke Corporation. She lives and breathes the mantra that smarter marketing starts with smarter data. Sean and Barbara, please take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody, for having us here this afternoon, this morning, depending on when you're listening to this and where you are. Really excited to be partnering up with Marketing Profs here today to talk about what I think most marketers are struggling with. And your mission is really around defeating a lot of the top 5 data villains that exist in all of our databases. Now, this pervades and permeates a lot of the activities that we do. It's one of the tasks that I think we as marketers are not as excited about doing, but it is something that's necessary for all of us to succeed. Just a brief overview in terms of the agenda. I'm going to be giving a brief overview of Dun & Bradstreet, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Barbara Ellis from Fluke Corporation. Barbara and I have worked together over the past year to help them address some of the data quality issues that they've had and really help them improve their go-to-market effectiveness as well as improve the visibility into their market penetration. She's got a great story and some real hands-on, real-world tips and tricks on how to address a lot of these common data problems that we see. I'm going to start briefly by talking about some market drivers and kind of the state of marketing data as we see it here at Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects, and then we'll get into the details of who these data villains really are and how to defeat them. And then we'll wrap up with some really good, solid lessons learned that Barbara's been able to garner at Fluke, and then we'll open up to question and answer. So here at Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects, we really do live and breathe marketing data. This company was founded around the premise that companies don't buy products, people do. And we as B2B marketers need to do a much better job of managing and maintaining the health, accuracy, and actionability around our marketing data. So we've really invested a lot of our time and effort into building a system, a marketing data management platform that enables organizations to truly leverage the value in their data assets so they can be much more effective as they go to market. So Net Prospects was around for almost 10 years, but at the beginning of this year, Dun & Bradstreet came knocking on our doors and said, look, we do a great job of managing company data. We have firmographic information. We are the de facto standard in the marketplace. We've been around for 175 years. But one of the things that we need to really augment our solution is we need that contact data. So this marriage between Dun & Bradstreet and Net Prospects really helps bridge that gap that we as B2B marketers face every single time that we try to go to market. We've seen the emergence of account-based marketing really starting to solidify in a lot of organizations, and that is the effective way of understanding what is the market opportunity? Who are the accounts and the companies that have the greatest need for our products and solutions and can afford them? But as I said earlier, at the end of the day, companies don't buy products, people do. So you need to be able to connect with the individuals that experience the specific specific pains and needs that your products and solutions can solve. When you bring these two things together, we're really focused on empowering marketers to drive much more predictable and repeatable business results by having a much stronger governance and control and confidence in the marketing data that they use to execute their go-to-market campaigns. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to Barbara so she can give you a brief overview of Fluke Corporation.
Thank you, Sean. As you can see here, the Danaher family of brands is fairly large and extensive, and Fluke falls within the test and measurement category. But as a member of the Danaher family, we adhere strictly to the policy of continuous improvement, and as such embarked upon a transformative marketing initiative about a year ago.
So, and I think that that's in response to a lot of issues that we've seen in the marketplace. You know, certainly as we look at where we as B2B marketers are spending their money, you can see here IDC did a study that looked at how organizations were actually allocating their marketing spend. And over the last 6 or 7 years, you've seen a dramatic increase in the allocation of funds towards digital marketing. And they predict that by 2016, that 50% of all marketing budgets will be allocated towards digital marketing programs. Now, this isn't just online ad placement and retargeting. This does incorporate also marketing automation platforms, as well as predictive analytics and all of those other factors that drive a digital strategy for marketers today. If you think back to where we were, say, 6 or 7 years ago with the emergence of marketing automation platforms, back at that time, it was really all about volume. Get me more names, get me more emails into my marketing automation platform so I can reach as broad of an audience as possible. But I think as the market has matured and we've gotten more sophisticated in our go-to-market approaches, there really is a leveling off and more of a balance towards focusing not only on having the quantity of the right individuals, but you really have to focus on the quality of that data. And Demand Gen did a report last year where they looked at organizations, and you really start to see that the majority of marketers now are starting to shift their focus towards higher quality leads, and it's not just about how many names do I have in my database. When you start executing on a lot of these digital marketing strategies that involves segmentation and specific content personalization, all of these things really then become dependent upon having complete data on all of the prospects and customers. So you really have to focus in on the depth and accuracy of those databases. So your content personalization, website personalization, all these new technologies that we're all investing in actually are basing their actions and their activities on complete and accurate data. So you can actually and really effectively drive a lot of these newer technology adoptions. The problem, though, that we've seen here in the marketplace is that, you know, the state of marketing data is not really that great. We processed last year in 2014, we offer a free data health scan that allows organizations to upload data sets and take a look at and gain visibility into data quality issues that they may have. We look at the deliverability of their email addresses, the completeness of their data, the presence of potential email threat risks, just to give people actual visibility into what their database looks like. And last year, we processed almost 250 million records through our data health scan. And we aggregate this data and we publish it in our State of Marketing Data Benchmark report. It's an annual report for us. And we've seen, you know, just massive increases in the amount of data that people are uploading and taking a look at. But across the board, we as marketers continue to struggle with the completeness and accuracy of our data. if you look on the right here, almost 3/4 of all data files that we looked at lacked basic segmentation data, whether it be industry information, the size of a company by employees, or size by revenue. Right, so that makes it very hard for us to target and segment and identify who our actual target market is and what kind of visibility do we have into this. So that's just in the upfront getting ready to go to market. Then the other challenge that we saw was that almost 2/3 of the data that we looked at had questionable email deliverability. So even if I were starting to go to market, I have to make sure that my emails are actually going to be received by a live individual and they're going to have a chance to take a look at the message or offer that I'm presenting to them. So it's a common challenge, right? And these types of challenges, we've tried to take a fun look at it, as fun as data quality can be. This year, we've really been focused on celebrating those individuals in marketing organizations that are taking it upon themselves and the organizations that are making a real focus on cleansing and maintaining high accuracy of their data. These are truly kind of the unsung heroes in marketing groups today, right? So we are fully celebrating marketing heroes, those people that are willing to do the tasks that others won't. And it's these heroes that have to, most heroes will have a nemesis, right? And for these types of people, these are these data villains, right? And as you saw from those statistics, data quality challenge, these villains lurk everywhere in most databases, right? So we thought we'd take kind of a fun play on things here and try to equate some of these data villains with actual villains out here. And Barbara and I are going to talk a little bit about these villains, and Barbara's going to talk specifically about how at Fluke they were able to address these challenges as they relate to their overall transformative marketing initiative. Now, the key thing about Fluke is that, as part of the Danaher Corporation, Danaher has made a strategic investment in Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects to help drive and facilitate cleaner, more accurate data as a way for them to improve their go-to-market effectiveness and improve their visibility into their target markets. So I'm going to take a step back and let Barbara talk a little bit about how they were framing their transformative marketing campaign, and then we'll get into the specifics of what data quality challenges are and how to address them. Barbara?
Thank you. So as you see the steps laid out in front of you, market segmentation and building visibility were obviously parts of step 1. For all of these tasks, it's probably worth mentioning that while they are steps towards a process, they maintain their validity and the need to execute them over time. So you will build towards managing leads, but at the same time, you will continue to consistently improve your visibility, your marketing mix, and execution of your campaigns as you do so. Figuring out what market visibility means to you is a lot about how you'll go to market. Different operational execution from a campaign perspective will require different pieces of information. In our case, we are utilizing primarily digital marketing, email marketing, and tele-lead gen in order to maximize our campaign structure. Based on that, our visibility is calculated with the fields of information for contacts that best address those needs. Once you calculate what your lead requirements are to generate the kind of revenue that you've set forth, then you'll need to manage that mix to optimize all. And as you develop those campaigns and hone in on what works best, you'll be able to then subsequently manage leads against those.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that when Barbara and I started working together, one of the initial challenges that they were looking at, and it wasn't just at Fluke, it was at a lot of the other Danaher operating companies, was around the inaccuracy of their data. Right? When you think about market visibility, trying to gain where you are, what's your jumping off point for these initiatives, right? And inaccuracy is a common challenge, and we liken it to kind of poison ivy, right? It spreads like a vine through your database. So the industry accepted standard is that data degrades at 2 to 3% per month. So if you're not managing your data in a continuous fashion, all you're doing is you're increasing the amount of inaccuracy that pervades your entire database. And this really makes it challenging to segment and target more effectively and ensure that, you know, content is aligned to the right individual that's going to have the specific needs and challenges that you're trying to address. And then downstream, it's just going to clog up your demand gen funnel. Like, you're going to end up with people that are inaccurately scored through lead scoring or not routed to the appropriate place. We've also found that, you know, inaccuracy partners very closely with inconsistency. Right, and you could also look at duplication as being part of that problem as well, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. When you have inconsistency, it really becomes challenging to align your messages, to segment appropriately, and to allow your prospects and customers to feel as if you are engaging with them in a one-to-one conversation. If you fail to do this, right, we only have so much time to capture someone's attention. I know I personally get hundreds of emails a day, and if I'm gonna spend time with a specific email that comes in, it's got to grab my attention right off of the bat. And when it's inconsistent, or I see multiple emails coming in from the same sender, I have to choose my time wisely. And I think this is one of the things that, you know, initiated for Barbara.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we determined early on was there are two ways to look at this. One is, where is your database currently? How does it look? What are the gaps? What are the pieces of information that you feel are missing or inaccurate? But also, how does that relate to who you should be speaking to? So sizing our market was initially very important. What is the pool of targets we should be talking to, and how many of those do we currently have, and how many are we missing? And the next step was then to look at what pieces of information that we actually needed for those contacts based on how we were planning on marketing. So we developed that target profile and determined that there were 7 fields of information that were absolute must-haves, and if we did not have those, that our contact was truly not visible. Now, there are a myriad of other fields of information that we'd like to have, but those 7 are critical to our meeting our goals and being able to execute campaigns in the way that we'd like to. Then we looked at our database to determine where those gaps were. How many pieces of information were we missing of those top 7, and how would we go about getting them? So we looked at prioritizing all of our actions in order to close those gaps and started looking for partners to help us do that. Where do we actually need to go to get the rest of the information? And then ultimately, once we do that, how do we keep it going? How do we cleanse the database and update it? How do we verify that our emails are correct and our phone numbers are correct? And what pieces of that information do we pull in from outside, and what do we update from an internal perspective?
Yeah. The thing I love about this approach that you guys took, Barbara, was that you were very programmatic in your approach. You took very distinct steps. You can see here on this slide, right? You broke it down into specific steps, and, you know, all of these things, they build upon each other, and it really, really, you know, gave you momentum and allowed you to set things from a jumping off point to really, you know, build upon each little success.
Absolutely, and probably worth noting again is that they continue to go on in tandem with one another. We continue to size the markets over and over again. We look at new verticals that we want to go into, and being able to determine what that audience size should be is a big part of that. But then how to go out about getting that audience size, and what should those contacts really look like.
Right, yeah. And well, when you think about what should they look like, right, that's when this kind of next data villain rears its ugly head, right, is incompleteness. And when you've got incomplete data, it actually raises more questions than answers for you. And with you guys specifically at Fluke, I think
it actually opened my eyes a little bit in that we're not just talking about incompleteness in contact records, but what that incompleteness in contact records does is it leads to an incompleteness in your market coverage or market visibility, inability to understand how much of the market, of my target market, can I actually address with what's in my database right now. And I know that, as part of this initiative that you guys were going through, you were trying to not only cleanse and create a complete, accurate sense of who you had through your historical demand generation activities, but you knew that in order to grow your market coverage and increase your market penetration, that you were going to need to acquire and really look at your contact acquisition strategies as well. And I may be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I do think that that incompleteness, right, leads towards poor segmentation. It leads towards less effective lead scoring. And when you look at that visibility initiative, I think that, Barbara, you guys took a very, systematic approach to that. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
It was systematic, but it's also very simple. We want to make sure that those that we have in our database meet a few basic criteria. Are they addressable? Do we know their name? Our operation is a global operation, and especially in Latin America, knowing the complete name is incredibly important, including middle name. Are they contactable? Do we have an email, a phone number, a location? Can we reach out to them successfully? Are they relevant to our offering? So do we know what company they work for, what industry we work for, and what Fluke tools would best meet their needs and combat their pain points? And is all that information actionable? Do we know what they do within their organization and what their role in decision making is? And for Fluke very specifically, we're looking at end users and influencers more than those that lead. So in our case, we're not as interested in directors and CEOs and CFOs as we are in the guys on the line. We want to know those that actually physically use the tools and make sure that they have all the information that they need and access to the wide assortment of solutions actually available to them. So to that end, we developed the current visibility formula, if you will, and the 7 must-haves, which is first name, last name, the company they work for, the job title and or department and job function, an email address, a telephone number, and the industry within which they operate. Those key pieces of information create this visibility, and at present in our focus industries, we are at 67% visibility across our targeted universe. And I think that's probably the next thing of interest, is the difference between our targeted universe and what's in our database. But I'll go into that in a minute.
Yeah, and I think that 67% is amazing, Barbara, what you guys have been able to accomplish. And I think, though, that, and like you say here on this next slide, right, it's not just about what you want, but it's also what you don't want, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's been a big key to our relationship with net prospects and the ability to really focus in on quality adds to the database. And that is for us, and in this specific initiative, being able to say, it's these SIC codes or NAICS codes that we're interested in. It's these job titles that we have to adhere to. And because job titles in the industry specifically are so broad and change so much, we've gone to a keyword inclusion and exclusion perspective in order to pull in data. So we provide to net prospects the keyword inclusions, those keywords that we want in the job title, but more specifically and more importantly, the ones we don't want, because we're not looking to speak at the director level or the VP level. We don't want to talk to legal or payroll or accounting. And by keeping that noise out of our database, we're able to really make the relevancy of our message to our end user customer very, very clean. And the result of that is seeing a 0.3 opt-out rate that is the traditional opt-out rate from a Fluke database perspective only climbed to 0.7, even though we're loading the top of the funnel at a very quick rate.
Yeah.
So for us, it was all about the company contacts within specific industries and based on specific titles.
Yeah, and I think that's right. When you look at and actually we'll get into this when we show the actual growth that you guys have done over this past year. It's truly incredible that when you start adding in new names, there is going to be an expected increase in some of these, unsubscribes, but the more complete the data that you have, the more accurate it is, the more relevant you're going to be towards your target audience. And while you increase numbers, you may see those gains, those increases in some of those metrics. Overall, the net new prospects that you generate from it clearly make up for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so this leads us into this. Okay, so now when you address these issues, it's more complete, it's more accurate, I can segment more effectively. Now it's time to go to market, right? And one of the key things that's going to stop a program in its tracks is if you can't reach the individuals, whether it's through an undeliverable email address or an unconnectable phone number. These are the things that really can, unfortunately, you end up setting false expectations for the campaigns that you're running. It can really prohibit you from setting appropriate goals based off of expected responses and marketing qualified leads that are generated, sales accepted leads, etc. And when you fail to pay attention to undeliverable emails, this really can have a significant impact not only on your sender score but also your relationship with your marketing automation partner as well. One of the things that we try to espouse here at Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects is take a proactive approach, right? And I think that's one of the things that I've enjoyed working with Fluke so much about is that they really, they jumped in with both feet to try to address these challenges.
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead,
It was a top-down initiative which made it much easier for us in order to get the buy-in that was required across all aspects of the organization.
And yeah, and I think one of the things that you guys really did was automating, right? You automate what you can, right, and then building out to remediate what's going on in any issues that you uncover. And you guys heavily leverage impressions, didn't you, Barbara?
We do. All of our acquisitions are absolutely suppressed based on our existing database, and that is really what has allowed us to always be acting relevant and new contacts and not be creating duplication where it's not needed.
And the final villain is really around duplication, right? And this, as I said earlier, frequently partners with incompleteness and inconsistency, and really is just a result of poor data management, poor stewardship around information, and it really can kill personalization, right? And as you try to create those one-to-one conversations with individuals, it really can wreak havoc on your ability to connect in with those individuals. I think when you look at this, Barbara, how would you say that you guys approach this from your perspective?
Well, we reached out to the best resources we could find for each aspect of this process, and specifically when sizing the market, we went to D&B and Hoover's, and we were also working with Net Prospects from the contact perspective. So when D&B and Net Prospects made their merger, it was really beneficial to us because, you all were our favorite go-to resources to start with. So when it came to sizing the market, being able to use Hoover's and D&B information to determine how many businesses existed in the key categories that we were looking at, and how many employees those businesses employed was really important towards getting our universe, our pool of prospects sized. And then we also bounced that information up against the U.S. Census data. In addition, we used net prospects to not only acquire but qualify those prospects and then keep them updated from a cleanse and append perspective. We also use outbound calling to qualify prospects and indeed move them into sales leads where applicable, but also to update and keep the information current. But as everybody knows, outbound calling is very expensive, so therefore being able to utilize the net prospects workbench is not only a huge cost savings, but also a huge time savings. So we're very happy to have that tool. We're adding right now a second tool, which is the Net Prospects Connector. And this will allow us, as we bring potential leads through the funnel as MQLs, to update missing information through Net Prospects Connector real time before adding them to our database. We also use progressive profiling in order to accomplish this. But the more that information we can get about the actual prospect without asking them for it, the better. And the slide that you're seeing now is a snapshot of where we were from a database perspective and where we are today. And I think here it's well worth noting that this is a really good example of our two views and our two goals when it comes to database maintenance. The first is, where's our existing database versus our formula for visibility? How many of the contacts that we currently own do we really know everything we need to know about? And then the second is the database versus the target contact universe, and that's all the people we should be talking to. And how do we rack up against the audience we need to be addressing versus the audience we have? So as you'll see in the very beginning, in April of last year, our jump off point was pretty minimal. We had not a lot of people in our database, and of those people, we didn't know a lot about them, and we didn't know those 7 pieces of information. So we had a huge gap not only between what we knew and what we needed to know about the people we already had, but if you look at that less than 20% of the database up to the 70%, which was our goal for the year, there was a huge gap there. As you follow the timeline along, you'll see in October of 2014, we filled a lot of that gap from an industry perspective by doing a cleanse through net prospects against the data that we already owned, and being able to apply industry to over half of our existing database. The next thing we did was a cleanse against contact information that was simply missing, and we were able to fill a lot of the gap of visibility at that point against our target profiles. And then we merged our 4 databases. So we had a marketing database, a sales database, a product registration database, and a service organization database. And that's what you see we did back in February of this year. That increased the number of contacts that we had, but created a gap again between those that have industry and those that have all the 7 points of information applied. And as we cleanse our data, we're collapsing that gap, but that is definitely going to be an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. I think I look at this slide and I think it's just amazing what you guys have been able to accomplish in really in about a year and a half, to go from about 15% market visibility to 67% today. Taking this programmatic approach is really proves that you've leaned into this and you have defeated a lot of these common challenges, and this can be done.
It absolutely can be done, and I think we really consider the fact that we started this process in earnest just in October. So it's really been a very short period of time. Some of the lag that you see between April and October was time that it took to apply some structural changes to CRM, to, get everybody on the same page. So some of the lessons that we learned is, pre-launch alignment is critical. Making sure that your sales organization is partnered with your marketing goals, and that your distributors are read in, because they'll start to see a change in the way you do business and the way you go to market. And you need to be sure, in our case very specifically, that everybody understands that the end goal of that is to engage and influence the consumer and then push them through to the distributor for sale, in our case. Infrastructure is always going to be a factor, and that those changes not only will be necessary and consistently appear as you tackle different parts of the process, but they will take time, and engaging your IT department with the requirements necessary will be a big part of that equation in terms of speed. Good data comes at a price, and I'd have to say that's not only from a dollars perspective, but more importantly from a discipline perspective. Changing the way we interact with our database has been one of the biggest takeaways for Fluke specifically, as we set the bar for the minimum amount of information we can put in the database, whether it's from a sales lead perspective, from an acquisition perspective, or just from a cleanse and append perspective. The good news is we've already seen the halo effect from increasing our database and cleaning up our database with promotion performance, where we have increased response and redemption on those promotions that we've been running for many years. One of the things that we see as we look back, we approach this from a contact acquisition, from filling our funnel with potential prospects. But as we look back, we think that potentially building out our accounts and determining what accounts that we were focused on, and then applying the contacts to those accounts might have been a cleaner way to do that, and we're actually doing that now. So as we rebuild our database, we'll be looking to attach every single one of our contacts to a home account, or in this case, a plant, a site, a location. And then the final takeaway I'd say is that you really need to plan for higher risk activity. Anytime you engage people who have not raised their hand and asked to be included, you're going to see some changes in things like IP risk, your opt-outs, and third-party acquisitions are the best and fastest way to fuel growth. But there is a slightly, and we were surprised to find, in our case, very slightly increased risk in that behavior, and you need to be prepared and socialize that fact that things are going to change a bit. So for example, Fluke is used to a 0.3% opt-out. That's, in my book, stellar in any industry. And we did see it grow to 0.7. And making sure that everybody understood that that was behavior that we expected and that we were okay with was a big part of keeping everybody happy. But in general, the big takeaways are good communication, publish what you're doing ahead of time, publish results, and people come along automatically.
Yeah, and you've seen, haven't you seen a corresponding, you've almost doubled your response rates in the course of this time, right? While you have seen an uptick in some of those unsubscribes, it's also key to point out, though, with that complete data, your segmentation, your offers are aligned, you've also seen increases to responses, which is filling the top of your funnel, correct?
The halo effect for us has really been, in terms of promotional offers, has been about 2x, and that's a big jump, and a side benefit, because that really was not the core goal against our database manipulation. The other thing we've been able to do is really effectively now change the way we go to market, and instead of being a broadcast seed effect, if you will, where we're sending consistent messages to our entire audience, we're now able to sculpt and create messages that are applicable to specific industries, and approach our contacts in the manner in which is most relevant to them. And that has seen, an uptick in opens, an uptick in click-throughs and engagement.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, Barbara, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I believe Rob is going to handle the question and answers.
Yes, thank you, Sean. And thank you both for all this great information. This was great stuff we put together. Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you have any content that you're sharing on Twitter about the seminar, please do use #MarketingHero so we can see what you're saying. If you have any burning questions for either of the presenters, now is the time to get it typed into the Q&A box on the left. We're going to go ahead and get started with some of the questions that have come in so far. The first one actually comes from Jordan. And what's the first step in better data if you're a small company with limited resources in terms of people, time, money? What kind of recommendations do you guys have for that?
Well, Barbara, I'll take that initially. I certainly think that the first place to start is to get some visibility into what your data looks like. And it's maybe a shameless plug, but we have a free data health scan that you can use. If you go to smartmarketingdata.com, you can sign up for an account and start doing a data health scan. That visibility enables you to kind of see where your biggest issues are, and then you can start to address them programmatically. Barbara, any thoughts?
I'd wholeheartedly agree with that data scan. We use it periodically, as well as other tools that NetProspects has to offer. But the thing I would include in that is discipline. And it's very difficult to be disciplined about what you add to your database. There is a desire to capture more than there is to fulfill. So what you end up with is, well, I have his first name and I have his phone number, but I want to get him in the database. I want to make sure I don't lose track of him, so that's enough. And you really need to determine early on what it is that you have to have and be diligent about not accepting anything less.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for that. Do you guys, either of you, have any type of case study that you can kind of present or talk about a little bit that can really drive this into a real-life example?
I think Barbara covered a lot of this. We're actually in the process of trying to write this one up as a specific 2-page deliverable that you can download. There's also we can follow up with you on specific use cases, but I think that Barbara did a pretty good job of highlighting where they were and what they were able to accomplish.
And I think to that I might add that this is a journey, and as a case study, it is okay to distill it down to 2 pages of essence, but understand that this process is a journey, and it needs to become what we call standard work. It needs to become the way you live, eat, and breathe when you're doing marketing, and from the sales perspective as well, and understanding the value of this process long term needs to be part of your company culture.
Yeah, great. We'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that write-up on this. It'll be really interesting.
Yep.
Barbara, did you find it hard to convince the team to invest in data management? Do you have any advice on really getting that executive buy-in?
Well, I have to say, in this particular situation, I was extremely lucky to have this be a top-down initiative from Danaher, because that is the type of initiative that does tend to get the attention and the buy-in. And we were very lucky, and still are very lucky, to have several very senior leadership sponsors for this project and enjoy that type of visibility ourselves. But I will say, with previous companies and partners that I've worked with, it is incredibly important that people understand the investment needed in time, in money, and in resources, and the ability to construct the platform before you start to build upon it. So, updates to your database software or decisions in how to merge databases becomes incredibly important. But I do think that very quickly the results that are seen bring people to the table that might have been naysayers previously. And when you can show progress and show where that progress has netted you results in lead generation, or better yet, obviously, revenue, whether they're on board at the time, they get on board very quickly.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we are out of time. Thanks again, Sean and Barbara, for all that wonderful information. Ladies and gentlemen, if we didn't get to your question, please feel free to reach out to D&B Net Prospects directly using the contact information here on the slide. I really hope you enjoyed today's seminar, sponsored by Dun & Bradstreet Net Prospects. We truly value your feedback on this as well, so please take a moment to fill out the survey here in the slide. Thanks again to everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you again very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.